So let's move on with clip number 3. Clip number 2, chapter 4, clip number 2, slides 8 through 20. So we've got a few slides to go through here. So let's look at the different indexes, the popular indexes, the well-known indexes that are out there. We'll start with the best known, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the DJIA. Okay? It is the best known and the oldest stock index in the U.S. It was started way back in 1896. It was one of several indexes created by the founder of the Dow Jones Publishing Company, Charles Dow, who was a well-known investor in his day and owned this publishing company, the Dow Jones Publishing Company. And the biggest publication of Dow Jones is the Wall Street Journal. They also publish Barron's. Okay? It is now owned, the Dow Publishing Company is now owned by McGraw-Hill. That's right, the textbook manufacturer. Okay, the Dow Jones is a price-weighted index. This means that the price of the stock determines the percentage weighting of the stock in the index. So the stock prices of all the stocks in the index are summed, and the price of each stock is divided into the sum to determine the weight of each stock in the index. Okay? Because the Dow is price-weighted, changes in high-priced stocks affect the index more than changes in low-priced stocks. The denominator, or the sum, that the price is divided into factors in some issues other than just stock prices. It's a very complex formula. It's a secret sauce, and let's just leave it at that there is a numerator, which is the stock price, and there's a denominator that includes several factors, the most important of which is the stock price, but there are other factors that are involved in there. And the Dow consists of 30 blue chip companies. What does blue chip mean? It means large, established, successful. That's what blue chip means. All right, so here are the companies in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and they actually may have changed recently. They change every 2 or 3 years. They'll take 1 or 2 companies out and put 1 or 2 companies in, so I need to check and see. This was the latest list I had, but I need to check to see if there are other companies in here. I believe General Electric recently came out. And in fact, if you'll bear with me, let me check and see. We're going to do this live right now. Let's see. Is GE in the DJIA? It's not. Let's see who they replaced it with. Booted from the industrial average on June 19th. So it was removed, and who did they put in its place? GE was part of the blue chip index, blah, blah, blah. Managing director. Oh, they put Walgreens in instead. Replaced by Walgreens. Okay? So again, what they try to do is they want the index to reflect what's going on in the U.S. economy. Okay, so Walgreens is in, GE is out. All right, so 30 companies. You can see, you know all the names. If you don't, then you've been asleep. Okay? All right, there are 3 problems with the Dow Jones Industrial Average when it comes to determining whether it's a good index to use for the overall market. The first is the sample size is very small, only 30 stocks. It's hard to pick 30 stocks that will be representative of the entire universe of the market. Once again, when someone says to me the market, my question is, what market are you talking about? Well, the stock market. Well, are you talking about the U.S. market? Are you talking about the global market? Well, we're talking about the U.S. market. Well, are you talking about growth stocks? Or are you talking about value stocks? Huh? Are you talking about large company stocks or small company stocks? Okay, so when someone says the market, you've got to be very careful with that. When a client calls me up and says, hey, my portfolio was up 12%, but the market was up 14%, my question is, what market are you talking about? Well, it's what they tell me on television. What they tell you on TV is not the market. It is one index, and the question is that index really representational of the market? Okay? And as you're starting to find out, the answer is no. Okay? All right. All the stocks are for companies that are large, mature, and are industry leaders. We're talking about problems with the Dow Jones. Okay? The computation of the index has a negative bias against faster growing companies that split their stocks more frequently because these stocks lose weight in the index with each split. So what I'm saying to you is, I don't have a marker here, but if you have a $100 stock, remember the Dow Jones is price weighted and it does a 2-for-1 split. The stock will go to 50. It will lose weight in the index. Okay? Please note that Dow Jones also publishes a 20 stock transportation index and a 15 stock utility index. So there are many Dow Jones indexes. There are, when you say the S&P, okay, that's another index we're getting ready to look at. There are many S&P indexes as well. Excuse me. All right. Let's look at value weighted indexes. So the Dow Jones is a price weighted index. Let's look at value weighted indexes. These indexes are weighted. The percentage each stock is of the index is a function of the market value or the market capitalization, which is the number of shares of stock for each company multiplied by the current market price of each stock. Okay? The market values for all the stocks are summed. The market value of each stock is divided into the sum to determine the weight each stock has in the index, and that's important. Market cap weighted indexes are biased by changes in the stocks of companies that have large market values. Once again, the weighting of a stock in the index will skew the contribution that that stock makes to return, positively or negatively, depending on how that stock did. Okay? Consider a two-stock index that is value weighted. Stock A has a market cap of $1,000. Stock B has a market cap of $600. Okay? Assume stock A goes up 20% and stock B goes down 20%. If the market is these two stocks, what happened in the market that day? And the answer is nothing. Okay? The index should say you had a 0% return. One was up 20, the other was down 20. Okay? So that in and of itself, when you say, well, nothing happened, we had a 0% return, au contraire. One stock was way up, one stock was way down. So that index number is not telling us anything. Okay? What happens to the index in this case? Well, stock A is 62.5% of the index, and stock B is 37.5% of the index. That's their weightings. Okay? So let's multiply the weight of stock A by the move of stock A. Let's multiply the weight of stock B times the move of stock B, and what we find is the market was up 5%. That's what happens due to the market cap weighting. All right, so stock A skewed the results of the market. All right, let's look at the S&P 500. These are examples of value-weighted indexes. The S&P 500 is the best known value-weighted index out there, and I would venture to say it's probably the second best known index in the world after the Dow Jones. Okay? S&P 500, 500 stocks in there. 400 are industrial companies, 40 are utility companies like electric utilities and gas utilities and telephone utilities. 40 are financial services companies like banks and insurance companies, and 20 are transports like trucking companies, airlines, railroad companies. Okay? There are New York Stock Exchange stocks in there, and there are over-the-counter stocks in there. Okay? And this is the most frequently used index to benchmark money managers. In other words, if you're going to determine how your portfolio did or how your money manager did, the default index that people will use is the S&P 500. And again, it depends on what your portfolio looked like, is it to determine whether the S&P 500 is the right index to use. Okay? It has been around a long time. It is well known. Okay. It is not a good representative of the overall market. Okay? All of the companies in the index are large and mature. The value weighting gives larger companies disproportionate influence, and so here we go. You can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the top 10 stocks listed by their weighting in the index. So 10 divided by 500. That's 0.002% of the index represents 18% of the market value of the index. So these stocks greatly skew the value or what happened to the S&P 500. So these stocks will largely drive the performance of the S&P 500. So when a client calls up and says, hey, the market was up 15%, but I was only up 12%. Okay? First thing I tell them is, well, what is the asset allocation in your portfolio? I said, well, I'm 70% in stocks, 30% in bonds. Well, there aren't any bonds in the stock market. Okay? So right off the bat, you can take that 15%, you can cut it by 30%. Okay? Secondly, we decided that we were going to diversify your stock portfolio into international stocks and U.S. stocks. So 70% of your portfolio is in U.S. stocks. 100% of the S&P 500 are in U.S. stocks. How did international stocks do? Well, I don't know. Well, let me tell you. International stocks were up 10% this year. Well, why are we investing in them? Because they have dissimilar return patterns, and over the last 25, 30 years, they've actually done better than the U.S. market. They just didn't happen to do better this year. Okay? And next, let's look. We decided that we were going to put international and we were going to put mid-cap and small cap. The S&P 500 is all large cap. Let's see how mid-cap stocks did this year. Well, they were up 13%. Well, if they were up 13%, the S&P was up 15%, why are we invested in them? Because over the last 30 years, mid-cap stocks have done better than the S&P 500, just not this year. Are you starting to get an idea of what I'm talking about? Let me check and see how we're doing. Okay, so we're recording. My point is this. You better be darn careful about talking about the market and a specific portfolio. It is easy at the end of a period of time for someone to say, why didn't you? Okay? You have to agree on the front end that you are going, if you want to be in the S&P 500, which represents like 8% of the total investable stock market around the world, would you knowingly put 100% of your portfolio into one security? And the answer is probably not. That's not diversifying. Why are you putting it in the S&P 500, which is only 8% of the world's equity market market capitalization? All right. So you better be willing to take that risk on the front end. Don't you come back to me or any money manager on the back end and say, why didn't you? That's not a fair question. All right. And so I'm teaching you how these markets work so that you can in turn educate other people. And you can go into, all you can do as an investor is make an informed decision. You cannot second guess at the end of the period. You can, but it's ridiculous and unfair. All right, let's look at New York Stock Exchange indexes. Lots of them. There's an index for each sector: industrial index, utility index, transportation index, financial index. And then there's a composite that reflects all of these. Okay? All stocks in the New York Stock Exchange are included in these indexes. And again, as an example of the effect of market value, at the end of 1989, there were 1,720 companies in the index. Okay? And in 1989. But the largest 50 out of 1,700. So 50 is 3% of the 1,700. 50 of them, 3% of the index represented 40% of the total market value. Once again, kind of similar to the what we looked at a minute ago with the S&P 500. So they skew or distort the index. Okay. All right. Then there are indexes that are published by NASDAQ. Remember what NASDAQ is? NASDAQ is one of the two largest over-the-counter markets out there. Okay. 7 categories of indexes: industrials, banks, insurance, other finance, transportation, utilities, and a composite number. Composite. Okay, all NASDAQ or over-the-counter stocks that trade on the NASDAQ are in the indexes, and they are value weighted and are influenced by the 100 largest companies. Now we're getting broad here, the Wilshire 5000. So we're taking a look, there are thousands of indexes, we're taking a look at the most well-known indexes. The Wilshire 5000, it includes all New York Stock Exchange and American Stock Exchange stocks and most active over-the-counter stocks. So this is a broad U.S. Index, but 82% of the index consists of stocks that are on the New York Stock Exchange. So the Wilshire 5,000 stocks. All right. Now, these indexes, I like the Russell Investments indexes. Russell has several indexes that are based on style and on market caps. So now Russell has created indexes that are more precise, okay, in terms of focusing on different sectors of the market, okay? So we have the Russell 3000, and it's a broad index that covers 97% of U.S. equities. Then we have the Russell 3000, the Russell 1000, which contains the 1,000 largest stocks in the 3000. So this is the Russell 1000 is for large cap stocks. Okay, they're sorted by, so you take the 3000, sort it by market capital in descending order, and grab the top 1,000. All right, then we have the Russell Mid-Cap Index, which contains 800 of the smallest of the 1,000 companies. So they eliminate the 200 mega cap stocks, and you have 800 companies that, out of the 1,000, that make up the Mid-Cap Index. And you sort based on market cap, okay, and then you have the Russell 2000, which contains the smallest 2,000 companies that are in the Russell 3000. So the Russell 3000 is broad, the Russell 1000 is large, the Russell mid-cap is mid-cap, and the Russell 2000 are small caps. So these are more precise. Now, if you've got a small cap portfolio, you would use the Russell 2000 as your benchmark, okay? Then Russell goes farther than this, and they chop it into value, okay? And so what they do is they group the stocks together, and they sort them based on price to book ratio. That is a valuation metric, and they look at expected growth rates. And so the companies that have the lowest price to book and the lowest expected growth rates are considered to be value stocks, okay? And then growth stocks, that's what's left over after you take the value stocks out, okay? They have the highest price to book ratios, highest multiples, and the highest expected growth rates. Growth investing and value investing. And let's see if we have it here. Here, I should say this about these growth and value. Russell will use two-factor sorting, and they have large cap value, mid cap value, small cap value. And they have large cap growth, mid cap growth, and small cap growth. Okay, then there are unweighted indexes, and each stock is equally weighted, which I like a lot. When you're trying to pick an index that is representational of the universe, why don't you remove these distortions? And you do that by making them equally weighted, so no one stock has an undue influence on the index. So when you look at that index, how it moves is a more accurate picture of what actually happened in the market. All right, so the Value Line Index, 1,800 issues, so it's got a broad population. 80% of these are on the New York Stock Exchange, still a little bit heavy, but it does have large company stocks, mid-company stocks, and small company stocks, okay? The stocks are unweighted, so no particular stocks distort the index, and I believe this is probably the single best index to use to assess the overall stock market in the United States. How is the market doing? Let's use the Value Line Index. And Value Line is a research organization, a stock research organization, and also they have research on mutual funds. And so they create their own index, the Value Line Index, which I like a lot. So just glancing here, making sure, okay, so we are done with clip 2, and we're going to take a brief break, and we'll come back and look at bond market indexes. Shalom.